When Adonai your God cuts off the nations whose land Adonai your God is giving you, and you take their place and settle in their cities and houses, you are to set aside 3 cities for yourself in your land which Adonai your God is giving you to possess. Divide the territory of your land which Adonai your God is having you inherit into 3 parts, and prepare the roads, so that any killer can flee to these cities. The killer who will live if he flees there is someone who has killed his fellow member of the community by mistake, who did not hate him in the past. An example would be if a man goes into the forest with his neighbor to cut wood and takes a stroke with the axe to fell a tree, but the head of the axe flies off the handle, hits his neighbor, and kills him. Then he is to flee to one of the cities and live there. Otherwise, the next of kin avenger, in the heat of his anger, may pursue the killer, overtake him, because the distance to the city of the refuge is long, and strike him dead. Even though he didn't deserve to die, inasmuch as he didn't hate him in the past, this is why I am ordering you to set aside for yourselves 3 cities. If Adonai your God expands your territory, as he swore to your ancestors that he would, and gives you all the land he promised to give to your ancestors, provided you keep and observe all the mitzvot I am giving you today, loving Adonai your God and always following his ways, then you are to add 3 more cities for yourselves besides those 3, so that innocent blood will not be shed in the land of Adonai your God is giving you as an inheritance, and thus blood guilt be on you. However, if someone hates his fellow member of the community, lies in wait for him, attacks him, strikes him a death blow, and then flees into these cities, then the leaders of his own town are to send and bring him back from there and hand him over to the next of kin avenger to be put to death. You are not to take pity on him. Rather, you must put an end to the shedding of innocent blood in Israel. Then things will go well with you. You are not to move your neighbor's boundary marker from the place where people put it long ago, in the inheritance soon to be yours in the land Adonai your God is giving you to possess. One witness along will not be sufficient to convict a person of any offenses of sin of any kind. The matter will be established only if there are 2 or 3 witnesses testifying against him. If a malicious witness comes forward and gives false testimony against someone, then both of the men involved in the controversy are to stand before Adonai, before the Kohanim and the judges in the office at that time. The judges are to investigate carefully. If they find that the witness is lying and has given false testimony against his brother, you are to do to him what he intended to do to his brother. In this way you are to put an end to such wickedness among you. Those who remain will hear about it, be afraid, and no longer commit such wickedness among you. Show no pity, life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. When you go out to fight your enemies and see horses, chariots, and forces larger than yours, you are not to be afraid of them, because Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, is with you. When you go about to go into battle, the Kohen is to come forward and address the people. He should tell them, "Listen, Israel, you're about to battle against your enemies. Don't be faint-hearted or afraid. Don't be alarmed or frightened by them, because Adonai your God is going with you to fight on your behalf against your enemies and give you victory." Then the officials will speak to the soldiers. They are to say, "Is there a man who has built a new home but hasn't dedicated it yet? He should go back home now. Otherwise, he may die fighting, and another man will dedicate it. Is there a man here who has planted a vineyard but hasn't yet made use of its fruit? He should go back home. Otherwise, he may die fighting, and another man will use it. Is there a man here who is engaged to a woman but hasn't married her yet? He should go back home. Otherwise, he may die fighting, and another man will marry her." The officials will then add to what they have said to the soldiers. "Is there any man who is afraid or faint-hearted? He should go back home. Otherwise, his fear may demoralize his comrades as well." When the officials have finished speaking with the soldiers, commanders are to be appointed to lead the army. When you advance on a town to attack it, first offer it terms for peace. If it accepts the terms for peace, opens its gate to you, Then all the people there will be put to forced labor and work for you. However, if they refuse to make peace with you but prefer to make war against you, you are to put it under siege. When Adonai your God hands it over to you, you are to put every male to the sword. However, you are to take as booty for yourself the women, little ones, the livestock, everything in the city, all its spoil. Yes, you are to feed your enemy's spoil. You are to feed on your enemy's spoil, which Adonai your God is giving you. This is what you are to do to all the towns which are in a great distance from you, which are not the towns of these nations. As the towns for these people Adonai your God is giving you as your inheritance, you are not to allow anything that breathes to live. Rather, you must destroy them completely. The Hittite, the Emori, the Canaanite, the Perizzite, the Hivi, and the Usi, as Adonai your God has ordered you. So they won't teach you to follow their abominable practices, which they do for their gods, thus causing you to sin against Adonai your God. When in making war against the town in order to capture it, you lay siege to it for a long time, you are not to destroy its trees, cutting them down with an axe. You are to eat their fruit. So don't cut them down. After all the trees in the field, human beings, so that they have besieged them too. However, if you know that certain trees provide no food, then you may destroy them and cut them down, in order to build the siege works against the town, making war with you until it falls. If in the land of Adonai your God is giving you to possess a murder victim is found lying on the countryside, and the perpetrator of the murder is not known, then your leaders and judges are to go out and measure the distance between the murder victim and the surrounding towns. After it has been determined which town is the closest, the leaders of that town are to take a young female cow that has never been put to work or yoked for use as a draft animal. The leaders of that town are to bring the heifer down to a valley with a stream in it, and that never dries up, to a place that is neither plowed nor sown, and they are to break the cow's neck there in the valley. Then the Kohanim, who are the Levi'im, are to approach, for Adonai your God has chosen them to serve him and pronounce blessings in the name of Adonai. They will decide the outcome of every dispute and matter involving violence. All the leaders of the town nearest the murder victim are to wash their hands over the cow whose neck was broken in the valley. Then they are to speak up and say, "This blood was not shed by our hands, nor have we seen who did it. Adonai, forgive your people Israel, whom you redeemed. Do not allow innocent blood to be shed among your people Israel. They will be forgiven of this bloodshed. Thus, you will be banished the shedding of innocent blood from among you, by doing what Adonai sees as right. When you go out to war against your enemies, and Adonai your God hands them over to you, and you take prisoners, and you see among the prisoners a woman who looks good to you, and you feel attracted to her, and want her as your wife, you are to bring her home to your house, where she will shave her head, cut her fingernails, and remove her prison clothing. She will stay there with you, your house, mourning her father and her mother, a full month, after which you may go in to have sexual relations with her and be her husband, and she will be your wife. In the event that you lose interest in her, you are to let her go wherever she wishes, but you may not sell her for money or treat her like a slave because you humiliated her. If a man has two wives, the one loved and the other unloved, and both the loved and the unloved wives born him children, and if the firstborn son of the child of the unloved wife, then when it comes time for him to pass his inheritance to his sons, he may not give the inheritance due the firstborn to the son of the loved wife in the place of the son of the unloved wife, who is in fact the firstborn. No, he must acknowledge as firstborn the son of the unloved wife by giving him a double portion of everything he owns, for he is the firstfruits of his manhood and right of the firstborn of his. If a man is stubborn, rebellious son who will not obey what his father or mother says, and even after they discipline him, he still refuses to pay attention to them, then his father and mother are to take hold of him, bring him out to the leaders of his town at the gate of the place, and say to the leaders of his town, "This son of ours is stubborn and rebellious. He doesn't pay attention to us, lives wildly, gets drunk. And all the men of this town are to stone him to death. In this way you will put an end to such wickedness among you, and all Israel will hear about it and be afraid. If anyone has committed a capital crime and is put to death, then hung on a tree, his body is not to remain all night on the tree, but you must bury him on the same day, because a person who has been hanged has been cursed by God, so that you do not defile your land, which Adonai your God is giving you to inherit."